I feel like this video has been a long time coming. I try to space out my ministry videos because I don't want to do them all at once because then I have no more ministry to talk about. And I love talking about Uncle Al and ministry. Oh, by the way, before I get started, I wanted to bring this up. This hat, people keep asking me about this hat that I wear. It's got teeth, the eyeball. This is called a Mishka hat. And I didn't know that when I bought it. I bought this about 10 years ago. They don't make these anymore. And I just realized that over the last year since I've started wearing this. Again, I bought this about a decade ago and I wore it a little bit when I first bought it and then I stored it away. I have tons of clothes. I tend to buy clothes that I really enjoy, but I have so many clothes as it is, I don't always have time or even remember that I've got tons of clothes that I've never even touched or even taken out of its packaging. And so I have a lot of clothes where I just pull it out. I'll have it stored for a decade and I'll remember I have it. I'm like, oh, I can just pull this out and start wearing it. And then people are like, where'd you get that? And I'll say, I bought it a decade ago. They don't even make these anymore. And this is one of those instances. This hat, they don't make them anymore. And when I first bought this, I bought it because of the eyeball. I thought it was a residence hat. And that's a video I need to make for sure, the residence. I love the residents, and people that watch my channel obviously know who the residents are. I definitely will do a residents video at some point. I definitely love them. I think they're one of the most influential bands, not so much musically, but just stylistically and artistically of all time. Those of you who like the KLF, for example, I've done a number of KLF videos. Those guys would openly admit that the residents were one of their biggest influences, not musically, but artistically. The mystique around the band and such things. But this is not a residence hat, as far as I know. I thought it was when I bought it. I bought it, and I later learned that it's a Mishka hat. And yeah, they don't make them anymore. You can buy these hats in all different sizes and shapes and colors, or you used to be able to. I bought you know what? I don't even remember where I bought this. I saw it in the store and I had to have it. I remember there's a whole wall of these eyeball hats sitting there. I just wanted like a plain black one with that eyeball. But there were hats that were blue and green and red, and the eyeballs were different colors. I mean, they're all kind. You could probably look these up on eBay and find them. It's Mishka hat, Mishka. Look them up on eBay. You could probably find here. Let me put this where we can see it. There you go. You could probably find those on eBay, I would think. I don't know how much they'll be. I would think maybe they're a little more expensive than you might like because yeah, they don't make them anymore. All right, I got that out of the way. Now I'm going to talk about another ministry record. I'm going to hold it up tonight because I was ripping this evening. I've been listening to this week, and I want to talk about this record because this is a record that I didn't like when it first came out. And this is something just over the last decade. This came out in 1996, by the way. And this is a record that came at a time where I was not listening to this kind of music. And over the last 10 years, I have revisited this album after kind of dismissing this record for, a good 20 years. Over this past decade, I've re-examined it and I've re-listened to it, and I really love this album. Love it. It's grown on me so much. Love this record. And this is when ministry started going down the path they kind of are now. And they did just put a new album out, so it made me think of this. I'm not a big fan of the new album. I've made it clear that I don't love really anything Al has done over the last 20 years. I don't get it. I will always love Al, everything he did in the 80s and most of the 90s. He'll always forever get a pass for, but I'm not a fan of what he does now. I think it's okay, but to me, this is the last great ministry album, and I didn't always feel that way. I do now, though. And this is Filth Pig, if you didn't already know. This is the U.S. the American vinyl press of this. I don't know if it came out in other countries. I have no clue. But this came out in 1996, and during that time, I just was obsessed with electronics and techno and house and electro and ambient, and that was the stuff I listened to. And I knew I loved Ministry, obviously. I'd been listening to them for a number of years up to that point. But when this album dropped, it just wasn't at all what I was expecting. And I've learned as I've gotten older to never do that. Don't ever expect or not expect something from a band because you'll inevitably always be disappointed, I think. But I should have known with Al that he would do something like this. He went from With Sympathy to Twitch to Land of Rape and Honey to Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste to Psalm 69. Each one of those records was a progression, especially the progression he made from With Sympathy to Twitch and then Twitch to Land of Rape and Honey. Each little step he took there it was very radical. It shook a lot of people up. People didn't know what to do with his sound. And I love that. That's the irony of this. Like when those records continually came out, I was very impressed with how he could just stop what he was doing and kind of go in a new direction. And so as I think about it, now that this album's almost 30 years old, as I think about it, I don't know why I couldn't appreciate this, knowing that I loved that about Al, about how he could always change speeds and directions on the drop of a dime. I think my problem was is I just didn't like the direction he was going in. I like techno, obviously, and I really like metal music as well. I've always kind of liked metal music, but in that time in 1996, I wasn't really listening to any metal. So when this came out, it was extremely disappointing. I remember listening this very record. I bought this the week it came out, and I listened to it, and I was just pissed. I was like, "What has he done, Al? What are you doing? Releasing this dreck?" I mean, I really wanted more Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste. I wanted more Psalm 69. I wanted more of that sound. And when he didn't deliver it, I got pissed. I just was like, well, this is the death of Al. I don't know what he's doing now. He's gone on to some other thing. Excuse me. And I don't like it. It's just not something that I enjoy. So that's how I felt about this back in 1996. This album is, when I heard it in 1996, I heard some I don't know. I heard some like a slow death dirge of music, and that's just not where my brain was. That's not what I wanted to hear. Again, I was listening to Autechre and Aphex Twin and Black Dog and Andy Weatherall and David Holmes and dance music. That's what I wanted. And I knew Al was capable of kind of making music in that dancey world. And when he didn't do it, when he released an album that was just free of sampling and any electronics whatsoever, this was the first time he ever did that. I just was like, I just dismissed this. I didn't want to know. I was just deeply disappointed with what Al had done. Let me look this up too. I said this came out in 1996, but now I'm doubting myself. Did this come out? Okay, it did. January of 96. I was going to say, did it come out in 95? It almost did. I think the fall, there's a 12-inch that came out prior, I think, the fall. And I have that as well. I'm not going to show it. I think there were a number of singles that got released from this album. I don't think any of them are really worth having. They just have slightly edited versions and some forgettable B-sides. This is really all you need is Filth Pig. But he he made an album free of all of the things, every little thing that he was known for. Even when he went to Psalm 69, which was way more metal than anything he'd ever done, he still had sampling. He still had electronics in there. On here, he threw all that out the window. He didn't do any of it. This is all live, organic instrumentation here. And I didn't like it. And over the years, he continually put out albums, and I would listen to them, and I didn't really like them, and I still feel that way. Maybe someday I'll change my mind, like I have about this. But yeah, about a decade or so ago, I listened to this again, and all of a sudden, I guess I just was ready for it. Do you ever have an album when you hear it in its day and you just don't like it, and then you listen to it 10 or 20 years later, and you're like, oh, yeah, why didn't I enjoy this? It's sometimes you just need to be ready, emotionally ready, psychologically ready for something. I wasn't ready for this in 1996, but now in 2024, I'm more than ready for it. This is one of Ministry's best albums. I strongly feel this way. I think the only Ministry albums that I like more than this are Twitch, Land, Rape, and Honey, and The Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste. I like this better than Psalm 69. I think this is a fantastic record and very underrated in the world of Ministry. I don't know if it's probably underrated just generally, but I think Ministry fans in general just underrate this. This is a kick-ass album, man. And I kind of, and speaking of kicking, I kick myself for not appreciating this record more back in 1996. I feel like if I had just sat down and given it a chance to breathe a little bit, I would have enjoyed a pretty exciting sound back then for what it was. But it doesn't matter because the beautiful thing about Filth Pig is I don't think this album is aged. It still sounds fantastic. And like I described before, it's pretty much just a straight ahead, slow dirge metal album. And it's beautiful. The vocals are still distorted. He's still fucking around with his vocals. It sounds like Al, but Paul Barker, his bass is excellent on this. The production is really excellent. It doesn't sound like anything they'd ever done before. Honestly, I don't think it sounds like anything they've done since either. I've talked about this before, but with modern Ministry records, I have a real problem with Al's production. It's like he forgets the bass. He buries the bass deep, 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 deep down, and it's very tinny. It's all highs and no lows. I don't know what he's doing there. I used to think it maybe was a problem with the mastering or the certain format I was listening to it on, but it's not. It's just his stuff is very tinny. It's hard to. It's just it's auditorily a very hard thing to listen to. I'm not even talking about the music. It's just I can't listen to it. It doesn't sound good. The sound sounds off. This record, if you do happen to like his newer stuff, I would think you'd love this album because it's produced and mixed very well. Paul Barker's bass really comes through. I mean, earth-shuddering, bowel-quaking bass. Really nice production on this record. And Al's vocals and lyrics are fantastic. He's always been a political guy. Look at this cover. In fact, when you listen to this album, you realize that this cover is really the only humor of the album, and that's something else that Al changed on this. There was always like humor deeply embedded in all of the previous Ministry albums somewhere. There was a nod to something, there was a funny sample. There was always a sense of humor to them to some degree, but not here, man. This is like a serious, straight up, politically charged metal album. And fuck, it's good. If you think you don't like this record and you love Ministry, listen to this again, and I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. This album has grown on me like few albums have grown on me in my life. I really, really adore this record, and give it another shot. If you find that you don't love this album or you've given it a couple of tries back in the day and it wasn't striking your fancy, listen to it again. This is great stuff, man. And maybe you've always loved this. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Here's the back cover. Again, this is the US vinyl edition. I don't know if it came out in other countries. I have no idea. I could look it up, but whatever. You guys can tell me if you want. This I still have my original shrink on it. This is a sticker. This little Ministry thing right here. This is actually a sticker. But this dude's got like a piece of bloody meat on his head, and I've always loved this cover. It's fantastic. It's got a very boring inner sleeve. It's just got one of these poly inners, but you know, it protects the vinyl. I know I've talked about that before. There's side one, there's side two. I mean, nothing exciting to look at. If I had any slight quibble, it's that this album's pretty long and it's on one record. So it's probably just under an hour. I think side one has like, 25 minutes of music, and then side two has even more. It's maybe a half an hour. So, it's a lot of music compressed on there, but they still did a pretty good job of the press. I don't think it sounds terrible. If you were ever in the market to buy this on vinyl, I don't necessarily say I would hesitate. Pretty simple. I'm looking through the track listing right now. Reload is a great song, very brief, but a nice intro to this new world that Owl was experimenting with. Just kind of a slow grind, but the intensity and fuzzed out vocals are there. Filth Pig is one of the best tracks on there. Lava, Crumbs, Useless. It's just one heavy. When I say heavy, you can almost just you can feel the heaviness in your gut when you listen to this music. It's just slow grinding heavy music. Your ears just feel heavy, soaking all this music and sound in. Yeah, it's a very dense album, very densely recorded and mixed. Lots of stuff going on, but a dirge. Whenever I think of this album, I think of the word dirge, and I think most Ministry fans might agree with me on that. It's a very funereal enterprise and exercise with this record. Dead Guy, Game Show, which is probably my favorite track on here. Game Show is a wonderful track. Probably the longest song on here. Yeah, it's just almost cracking 8 minutes. It's just like if there was a track I would compare before, it might be Scarecrow from Psalm 69, but the production's better on this. I think generally the production's better on Filth Pig than it is on Psalm 69. I felt like tracks like Scarecrow on Psalm 69, the bass was lost, what I was talking about before, but not here. The bass is amped up on Filth Pig, and I think that's a good thing. That's what you want. He does Lay Lady Lay too. The Fall is on here also. That was a single. Lay Lady Lay, of course, is Bob Dylan. And I do love Bob Dylan. I will say that this cover of Lay Lady Lay by Al and Ministry is one of the best Bob Dylan cover versions I've ever heard. It's a fantastic cover version, man. You can tell that Al really loves that song. It's the most melodic song on here. It's the one that really pops and stands out more than any other record or any other song on this record. I mean, you could tell it's especially if you know Bob Dylan. But when you hear Lay Lady Lay, you can almost hear it like, oh yeah, this song really stands out. It's a great cover, man. It was one of the singles too. But it just fits. I don't know. Al made it work. When didn't Al make it work? He was always making things work. But yeah, I was ripping this today. I was recording this, I was digitizing this into my digital archive, and I wanted to talk about it. It was time. I've been wanting to talk about this for a while. Filth Pig, Ministry. You Ministry fans, let me know what you think about this. This is a controversial album in the Ministry canon. People, I feel like people either really love this album or they can't stand it. Ministry fans, I'm talking about. I feel like some Ministry fans, some of them still don't know what to do with this. This is one of those Ministry records. In fact, this might be the one Ministry record in their entire catalog that was the biggest head scratcher of them all. I think Al left a lot of people behind with this one, or he maybe forged a lot of new fans because I do think this was the first record that he made that connects what he's currently doing today. This is where it kind of started. This is where it began. Filth Pig. And I love this record. I'm really, really glad that I gave this another shot because when I hear this, I've been listening to this on the regular for the last decade, and I love it even more. I love it more and more each year. There's something new that exposes itself, and even though a record can be 30 years old, you can listen to it 20 years later and it sounds brand fucking new. And that's what Filth Pig does for me. And it just makes me love Al even more. I really just celebrate this guy. He really is one of the wonders of music history. All of the things he's done, all of the different things he's tried, the crazy life he's led, and his immense talent as a songwriter and a music producer, and just more than any of that, they're just a personality. His his ballsy approach to music, knowing that everybody wanted to hear another Psalm 69, he was like, "Fuck you! I'm not doing that. I'm doing this." And I don't care if you don't get it because I get it and I love it and I'm doing it. And there's nobody that can stop me. And that's why we should all love and worship Al Jourgensen, and we should love and worship Filth Pig. This is a wonderful album, and go listen to it again if you've listened to it before. And if you haven't listened to this, go do it. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks, friends. I will talk to you next time. Bye.